Hi, I'm Donna with In a Pickle Knitting, and I have a short tutorial for you today on applying an I-cord binding to a mitered square blanket. I have used the Coziest Memory Blanket by Kemper Wray in my blanket, and I'd like to show you how I attach that I-cord. This is what the I-cord border looks like attached to this garter stitch blanket that is the Coziest Memory Blanket by Kemper Wray. That's the pattern that I used, and since it's in garter stitch, in order to add this attached I-cord, you're going to need to be picking up stitches along the garter stitch edges for the most part. You might find a few of your squares will have a cast on edge, in which case picking up stitches will be slightly different. I'm not going to be showing that because everyone uses a different cast on edge, so they'll look different, but the garter stitch edges will be the same. The back of this binding looks like this. It's pretty flat. I'll use this small square for demonstration. The blanket itself was knit in fingering weight yarn, where I used a size 2 US size 2 needle. I picked up my stitches also using a size 2 needle, and I used a circular needle with the longest cable I could find to go around my blanket. This sample was knit with worsted weight yarn using a US size 5 needle to allow better visibility here. I have the stitch marker here just to denote this is the right side of the blanket, and you'll want the right side up as you pick up stitches. Just as a note, these stitches look rather large, and that is because I've already done this once and pulled them out so that I could refilm, and it's difficult to get them back to their original size. But along your garter stitch edge, you do have these little bumps, and that's where we're going to be picking up stitches. When I pick up stitches, I find the very first stitch to be easier if I use a crochet hook. You don't need to do that. I just find that pulling that first loop through is easier with a crochet hook. So you do it however works best for you. I will also use a contrast color yarn as I pick up these stitches so that hopefully you can see it a little bit better. The stitches we will be picking up are these right along the edge. That's commonly called a garter bump. I'm going to need to pick one up here in the corner, and that's where I find that difficult to do with my needle. So I will push my crochet hook through, pull through a little loop, and then I'm done with the crochet hook. I'm going to be picking up with a size 5 circular needle, the same size that I knit the blanket, or in this case the square in. And to pick up these stitches, I will insert my needle through that edge loop, pull the yarn through, and do the same thing. You're going to pick up one stitch for each bump along the edge, which in this pattern was 23 along each edge. And you can retighten that first stitch after a few stitches. And you're going to do this until you get to your first corner. So that's why you need that really long cable. I will come back to you when I get to that corner stitch. I now have 22 stitches picked up, and the 23rd stitch would be that corner stitch. But before I pick up a stitch for the corner, I want to pick up an additional stitch someplace in here. So that's a matter of playing around and finding a place where you can pick up a stitch, and then pick up one right in the corner. So that gave us an extra stitch here between the 22nd and the 23rd stitch. Now on the other side of this corner, because we're turning the corner this time, I want to do the same thing. I want to have 23 stitches here and this corner stitch, making 24 along this side. Again, you're going to be doing the same thing you did here, finding a place in here to pick up a stitch. Now, when I'm turning the corner, sometimes I pull the cable out so that I can turn and work this way a little better. And there was a place, and now I'm going to be picking up the first stitch from one of my rows. That one's usually a little tight. That's okay, we'll get it through anyway. And then just continue to go along the edge the way that you had done along the other side. This is a place where I might use my crochet hook, because again, it's a first stitch along an edge. If you have to do that, just pull it through and it's on your needle. And we'll keep going. We will assume you have picked up stitches around all 4 sides of your blanket. I've only gone around 2 sides of the demonstration square. You're not going to be knitting in the round. Instead, turn your knitting now that you've picked up all the way around and knit back along the picked up stitches until you get back to where you started, where you have your cast on thread still hanging there. So I'm going to be knitting back. I'm going to turn it over and knit back all of these stitches. I've knit back around the square to my starting point. You can see my working yarn is now over here with my tail of my cast on yarn. The reason I did this row of stitches back is to make a cleaner look to the I-cord color-wise. These stitches that have been picked up will now match the I-cord, and I found when doing this on my blanket, I did try to just pick up and then come back with the I-cord, that I had some places where I didn't like the colors mixing. Now it's time to start the 4-stitch I-cord. I found when adding this border to my blanket that after the first square, I set it down to look at it, and my I-cord stitches, being knit with the same size needle, were tighter than my blanket edge, and it caused it to pull in a bit. I took that out and went to a larger size needle. I went up 1 size. So on my blanket, since I had knit with a size 2, I went up to a size 3. In this case, I'm knitting with a size 5, and I'm going to go up to a size 6. To do the I-cord using a different size needle, if you have an interchangeable set, you could change the opposite end so that your right hand needle is a different size, or use a straight needle or a DPN. I like to do mine with a DPN anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. To get started, cast on 4 stitches. I'm going to use a cable cast on. I'm going to insert my DPN between the first and second picked up stitch, pull the yarn through, twist it onto my needle, insert between those 2 stitches. I'm going to do this 4 times. Now I have cast on 4 stitches. This stitch is the first picked up stitch. So to knit the I-cord, knit the first 3 stitches. The 4th stitch is going to be knit together with the first picked up stitch, and I knit them together through the back loop. So I've gone in through the back loop of my last I-cord cast on stitch and my first picked up stitch. Knit it through the back loop. that's the beginning of our I-cord. I have 4 stitches back on my needle. I'm going to slip them from the right hand needle back to the left hand needle. And you're going to repeat this over and over and over again. Going to knit these first 3 stitches, just like I did before. I then have my last I-cord stitch and the next picked up stitch. I'm going through the back loop, 4 stitches on the right needle, slip them back to the left needle. There are other ways to do this. If you don't like the look of yours, check out another YouTube tutorial. There's different ways to do this. Some people do some yarn over stitches in there. I didn't find that necessary. I'm going to come back to you when I get to the corner here, because that's where we're going to make our second modification to what we're doing so that we can turn this corner nicely. Be right back. I have been knitting and attaching I-cord all the way up to the corner now. These 3 stitches are the ones that we put an extra stitch, the corner stitch, and the other extra stitch. So before I get to there, I want to do I-cord that is loose. So each time we've attached, we've done a knit 2 together through the back loop of this stitch and the last stitch on our I-cord. To do a loose I-cord, and that's just what I'm calling it, I'm going to return the stitches to the left hand needle, but this time I'm not going to attach it. Instead, I'm going to knit 4 stitches. So we were knitting 3 and then attaching here by knitting 2 together. We're going to knit 4. This will make a loose piece of I-cord. It won't be attached to the blanket, but each row is attached. The row before it and the row after it is attached. So it doesn't really cause a problem. It gives some extra fabric to help turn the corner. So there's a loose I-cord. This was not attached to the blanket. Just slip your stitches back now. Back to the left needle. This time, attach, as we had been doing with all of the others. Knit 1, knit 2, knit 3, and knit this one together with, this is that extra, one of the extra stitches we cast on or picked up. So now we've attached, slip back, we'll attach with the corner stitch. So just the same, knit 3, knit 2 together through the back loop. That's our corner piece, our corner stitch. Now that extra stitch on the other side, the left side of the corner stitch, we will attach. And this time we're going to do another loose stitch. So we will I-cord the 4 stitches without knitting together and attaching it to the blanket. So knit 1, knit 2, knit 3, knit 4. This is a loose piece. It will not matter to the blanket. It just gives us extra fabric. And we're going to slip back. And continue as before down our other straight side. So each corner that you get to, you're going to, when you get to those 3 stitches that are in the corner, first do a loose I-cord, attach those 3, do another loose one, and continue around your blanket. So I'll stitch a little bit more of this and come back and show you how that corner turns. And now we've got the I-cord turned around the corner, and it turns pretty well. Here's the back. These little blips are when we did the picking up of stitches, but nothing shows through to the front with different colors because we did that extra row of knit stitches. Now to finish off, of course on your blanket you would have picked up stitches all the way over here. What I did was knit some loose I-cord. Remember how we did the 4 stitches, knit all 4 stitches until I got to about here, and they're not attached. Then I turned it and just used my tail to weave it together here and made a nice corner. So that's how you can add an I-cord edging to your blanket.